Harper's Kennel of Stella, Missouri is proud to be sponsoring this portion of broadcasting on KNEO. Owned by Judy and Danny Harper, Harper's Kennel of Stella, Missouri specializes in French Bulldogs. For more information, the phone number is 417-628-3083.
Welcome to Crosspoint. An interactive program featuring ministers and leaders of the Christian community addressing the issues that are challenging the church today. Here's your host, Mark Taylor.
Welcome to Crosspoint. I'm your host, Mark Taylor. Today my guest is Robert Knight, and we're discussing the battle we're in America for its soul and the war of values that is being fought. Robert Knight is an author. He's a weekly columnist for the Washington Times and a senior member of the Family Research Council and the Heritage Center. And welcome to today's Crosspoint. We've got back with us again, Robert Knight, and good book he's put out here called The Battle for America's Soul, which we know is something that's going on. And Robert, right here in the foreword of the book, Rob Pacienda, who's the CEO and president there of Coral Ridge Ministries, says that the greatness of a nation is defined by her character. So, is that what basically people do when they're out to destroy somebody like America? Is to go after the character of the nation?
I think you hit it right on the head. If you destroy the character of a nation, you break down families, you break down churches, you break down all the institutions that work like anti-inflammatories. And this has been overused, but I'll do it anyway. And that's when, the AIDS epidemic hit. People were told that what AIDS didn't actually kill you. What it did was remove the defense mechanisms in your body. So other things could kill you. And what's happened in America over the last several decades is the left has targeted the institutions that impart cultural values, such as churches, Hollywood, even corporations. They've really conquered virtually every institution, and it's all aimed at destroying the family. And if you destroy the family, then you leave the individual vulnerable to being utterly dependent on the state. This is not by accident. This has all been laid out by various Marxist theorists like Antonio Gramsci, whose slogan was "Capture the Culture." And he said, gee, the workers aren't participating in our revolution like we thought, like Vladimir Lenin thought would happen in Russia. So what we have to do is switch from economic pressure to cultural. And if we can destroy the family and undermine churches, then people won't have any defenses against the idea that the state will take care of everything for you. You can do it all. And we see a current example of that in the New York mayor's race right now in New York City, where Zohran Mamdani, who calls himself a Muslim socialist, but he's really a communist, is promising free childcare, free grocery stores owned by the city, free transportation, all kinds of freebies, and he captured the Democratic nomination. That should worry a lot of people.
Now, in the introduction of the book, you talk about on page 10, you say, the Republic begun with a 3.9 million residents, and that was way back in 1789. And now we've got, you say, about 330 million people and counting. So from then to now, back then, that 3.9 million people, where did they come from? And then where has this 330 million come from? Is there a variation in the kind of people that are here now that were from those that originally came that is a part of the issue as well?
Well, it is. The original, well, of course, the original inhabitants of North America were Indians, who we now call Native Americans. But what formed America as we know it was the Europeans who arrived. It was mostly British citizens with some Dutch, because the Dutch explored the Hudson River Valley in the 1600s. But the the loci of the beginning of America as we know it really happened in Plymouth, Massachusetts, with the landing of the Mayflower in 1620, and earlier in Jamestown in 1607 in Virginia. Those two colonies grew, and they populated the East Coast with a distinctly British culture, and that culture was based on English common law, which, as the great legal scholar Blackstone told us, springs from biblical values. So America began, and the founders were virtually all Christians. There's no doubt about it. And they formulated Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, and that laid out the idea that God created our rights, not us, not government. And this was a radical notion in the world. And from that sprang the idea of separation of powers, because we're not God, men are sinful, and nobody should have too much power. So the genius founders said, let's write a constitution that divides powers between several branches and between the states and the federal government. And over the years, many people have come into America. To answer your question, we've had major immigration surges, especially around the turn of the 19th century, when a lot of Irish and Italians came in. Irish because of the potato famine. I forget how many million actually came in. But in recent years, people have come from other areas of the world, and mostly from South America, Central America, and Mexico. So some areas are rapidly turning predominantly Hispanic. Certainly the south of Texas is reflecting that influx. And we had a major influx during the 4 years of the Biden administration when they didn't bother defending the border, and 10 to 20 million people who were unvetted came in. This became a crisis, and I think it's one reason Donald Trump was elected, and he has kept his promise and closed the border, and I think that's to the good. Not because I'm against Hispanic people, but people ought to be here legally, not illegally. And if they're here illegally, they're breaking the law, and that just encourages more law breaking.
Now, on chapter 2 of the book, it's page 23, you talk about a divided nation, and you say the United States is now nearly evenly divided into two worldviews. Now, being divided, yes, but you say evenly, so this means about the same on each side?
Well, if you look at our elections, the House of Representatives, which is the closest federal office to the people, is evenly divided. The Republicans have only a 6-seat margin, and the presidential elections have been very close over the last several cycles. The Senate is Republicans have a slightly better edge, but if you look across the nation, the Republicans have slightly more governorships and legislatures than the Democrats do, but the Democrats have a lot. And the Democrat Party has morphed into a very radical socialist party that pushes things that most Americans don't like transgenderism and collectivist economics and woke politics and DEI and all these things that people are rebelling against now. I will say this boldly. I think the only reason the Democrats are still a viable party and command almost half of the political offices is because of gerrymandering. It's because of cheating in elections. And I wrote another book about that, Mark, called Crooked, What Really Happened in 2020 and How to Stop the Vote Fraud. And that lays out all the evidence of what happened in 2020. But for years, we've been divided by worldviews, and increasingly, the Democrats represent a secular worldview. It's increasingly hostile and anti-Christian. It's pro-LGBTQ in all its forms. It's really quite radical, and I don't think John F. Kennedy or other Democrats would recognize their party today.
Yeah. Chapter 3 of the book, Preserving Religious Liberty, you talk about grilling the Christian nominees, and you go back to different ones who the last few years it's been grilled about qualifying for public office. But you say that the Democrats consider being a Christian to be a disqualification for being in public office. Why is that?
Well, it's because of their hostility to Christianity, because Christianity says that what they're doing is wrong. They're trying to make the state into a god, and they're promoting immoral sexual behavior. I call it sexual anarchy. They say that you cannot prefer the idea that a man and a woman ought to be married and married for life. And if you do, then you're being homophobic, you're being transphobic, you are looking down on others who don't share those values. And the funny thing is, Mark, the Christians are constantly accused of pushing their values on others, even though the Christian founders of this country founded the freest nation on earth, giving the most individual freedom. And it's the left that is trying to force its values on everyone. They are using corporations to do it. They certainly have tried to use the government to do it. I think one of the worst examples is in all the states that are run by Democrats have banned conversion therapy, they call it. And that's merely reparative therapy counseling for people with unwanted sexual desires. You know, you have a kid who is fighting homosexual desires, and you could take them to a counselor who can get to the bottom of it and try to lead them toward identifying with their real biological sex. It's been criminalized in these Democrat-run states. It's unbelievable that you can't have that kind of client freedom. Now, there's a case at the Supreme Court right now that the court has agreed to hear, and it's a challenge to Colorado's ban on that law. And that could bring a sea change. And I think we're seeing a couple things, and that is that I honestly believe there is a spiritual revival going on in this country. I think the darkness has become so dark, the evil so obvious in our media and entertainment and everything, and so many tragedies with kids that people are turning away and saying, well, where do we go? Well, of course, Jesus is the answer. And the more we are bold and share the good news of the gospel, the more people are going to gravitate to it.
Yeah. Now, at the end of that chapter, chapter 3, you talk about the real meaning of turning the other cheek. And you said when Jesus said to turn the other cheek, he meant that Christians should not be easily drawn into conflicts on a personal level and to suffer indignities by not responding in kind, but rather with dignity. But he did not mean that Christians should be doormats or watch as their children's future is destroyed because of unchecked tyrants. So when we do, as Christians, say anything, then quickly we're labeled, that of who we are. But again, this is exactly what I wish so many Christians wouldn't do. They back down too easily.
It's funny, the latest column I've just written is about how the fear of phobias is skewing reality. And people don't want to be accused of being haters or bigots, and the left has used that mightily to shut people up. And too many pastors are afraid to address the issues that are surging out there in the culture for fear of offending people. And I think that's one reason we're in the place we are now. Because if the church loses its voice as the moral conscience of the country, there's no one else to fill in that gap. And so when the pastors are quiet about things, then people think, well, these must not be important, I shouldn't get involved. They set the examples. And I don't want to see churches politicized, but there is no reason pastors should not address everything that's affecting people out there. And if they don't, I don't think they're actually giving the full gospel message, because they're only giving part of it, the part of it that's nice and soft and easy. And that won't help you when your kid is going to a school where they're telling them, you might be a girl, little boy, or America is really a terrible nation, and it's only characterized by slavery since its beginning, and we're going to lie to you about your own country. And But, Mark, I told you that I believe that things are turning around rapidly. Yeah. People are sick and tired of this stuff, and I think that's good news. And I hope more pastors rise up and speak plainly and clearly, because they're protected by God if they walk in God's way.
Now, Robert, you've written several books. You do a lot of writing. This book, The Battle for America's Soul, 10 Steps to Restore Freedom. If people want to know more about this book, know more about your ministry, what else you do, because you write for a lot of different places, how do they go about doing that?
Well, the easiest way, Mark, would be go to my website, roberthknight.com. That's roberthknight.com. And I post all my Washington Times articles there and articles published elsewhere. And I have a store with all my books in it. But you can also, while you're there, sign up for my newsletter. And my newsletter just consists of sending out my Washington Times column every Monday morning. And there's no spamming or anything. It's free. You just get the one column each week if you're interested.
All right. And so everything, all these books through the years that you've put together and everything can all be found right there.
That's right. Yep. Right. Even a law review article I wrote for the Liberty University Law Review on how sexual orientation threatens religious liberty.
Well, folks, stay with us, and we're going to have more right after this. This is Mark Taylor. If you miss a broadcast of Crosspoint, you can always go to our website at www.kneo.org and click on the programs page. There you can access the current Crosspoint program as well as the last 4 programs that have been aired. Never miss another Crosspoint program again. Go to www.kneo.org today. And welcome back to Crosspoint. I'm Mark Taylor. My guest today is Robert H. Knight, and we're talking about the battle for America's soul. And one thing I did want to ask you, Robert, we were talking about Christians and how they get involved and all that. But how much in this country is, over the last probably 7-8 years, maybe even a little more, the courts have been playing a much bigger role in how politics are done in this country? Why is that?
The short answer is that because people are wise to bad policies, that the left can't so easily create laws that uphold those bad policies, so they have empowered the courts to impose them on us. And this began years ago, during the Franklin Roosevelt administration, when he threatened to pack the Supreme Court if they didn't go along with all his schemes to create what I believe are unconstitutional federal agencies. There's nothing in the Constitution that really authorizes the kind of meddling in people's affairs that the federal government has done. But then it expanded greatly during the Great Society and Lyndon Johnson. Now we have a government that really is kept in check only by some of the courts, as it turns out, because of President Trump's election in 2016, and then again in 2024, we're seeing more conservative judges in the courts who are restoring the constitutional balance. The courts were never supposed to have this much power. In the Federalist Papers, which were written to pave the way for the Constitution, they said plainly that should have been the weakest branch. They believe the most powerful branch should be the House of Representatives and the Senate because they're closer to the people than even the president. But the way it's turned out is that the people who want to build the state and make it more powerful saw 2 ways to do it. They increased the power of the executive branch, which is the president, and created all these federal agencies that are laws unto themselves, many of them, and they enhanced the power of the courts. They kept just giving them more and more clout. And that has to be addressed. And I think that the more conservative Supreme Court we have now is trying to do that. It's trying to restore the balance. They've clipped the wings of the Environmental Protection Agency, for instance, saying you don't have these powers that weren't delegated to you by Congress. You've created all sorts of rules and regulations that have the force of law, but you weren't authorized to do that. That has tremendous impact, and it's freeing up the private sector, and I think that's a good trend we're seeing.
Just the title of your book, The Battle for America's Soul, I mean, the court system there can be a rule by the president or someone made on one day, and before the day's up, it's already got an injunction filed against it, and or even people could pass a law in a state by the vote of the people and have a judge step in and say you can't, make that law into effect because of something else. I mean, this stuff should have all been known before they ever did it. It's just like people seem to have people lined up to step in and cause problems because they are fighting for American soul, some on one side, and the others are trying to steal and destroy that soul. I don't know, but that's the way it kind of looks when we get into these battles with these courts and these judges.
Oh, I can't agree more, Mark. In recent years, we've seen federal judges proclaim themselves kings, basically, and saying, well, I know more than the President of the United States, so I'm going to overturn this executive order, or I know better than the Congress of the United States, and I'm going to invalidate this law. They do this all over the country, and it's shocking how much power they've seized. They have had a setback with the Supreme Court ruling that a single federal judge couldn't create a national injunction on a policy that's federal. Judges are supposed to rule on cases before them. This is the thing about the role of the courts. They were supposed to adjudicate disputes and have it apply only to the parties before them, not to the entire nation. And yet a single federal judge in Wichita or Bozeman, Montana, could decide, well, I know what's best for the entire country, and I'm going to overrule the President of the United States, who the people elected. I mean, it's shocking, and I think it's got a lot of people rightly upset.
Yeah. Chapter 4 of the book's Preserving the Freedom of Speech, and on page 47, you talk about the social media censors, and you say every day about 3 billion users worldwide visit Meta sites such as Facebook, WhatsApp, Messenger, Instagram, and, these have about 11 million users in the U.S., about 600 million worldwide. Now, in a situation like this continues to trouble me, Robert, because these people are so powerful that they can shut you up real fast and cut you off real fast. And I'm beginning more and more having an issue with the cell phones, because everything is done on a cell phone. Your banking, so many things. And all they have to do is control that one item, and they've got you. You can't do business. You can't do this. You can't do that. I'm wondering if we're ignorantly playing into the hands of these meta companies and those.
Well, this is one of those genies that's out of the bottle, Mark. Everybody's using their cell phones. They're an amazing instrument. Everybody's dependent on them now,
right?
And they're way too important, but I don't think there's any going back.
No.
Because when you hold one in your hand, you can access any information in the world practically, and they're so useful. Think about what it used to be like when you were meeting someone at the airport and didn't know if their flight was on time. I mean, now we know right up to the minute what's going on, and nobody has to wait. Little things like that, but I am concerned that we're addicted to them. Certainly, the social science research is building, showing that kids in particular are hurting their brain development by being addicted to their cell phones. Also, with the rise of artificial intelligence, people are doing fewer things with their brains. They're just taking it in. So they're not doing calculations like they normally would before, or even looking up information. It's all just instant.
Yeah.
This is going to make us very lazy. On the one hand, you think this would break the media monopoly that has long been dominated by the secular left and has been pushing its values on everybody. But when social media arose, the left conquered that too and started censoring anybody with another point of view, until Elon Musk came along and was fed up with it and spent $40 billion, I guess, and bought X, or Twitter, and turned it into X. That's become the superhighway of information. A lot of government agencies now use X as their way of getting messages out and so forth, and that has freed up media quite a bit. But the sheer torrent of information is a problem, because I think the next great crisis will be one of authenticity. How do you know what's real and what isn't?
Yeah.
If you can do a deep fake of someone, how do you know whether a photo is real, whether a video of someone is real? My wife said the other day she saw two videos, one of Billy Graham arguing one side of a theological question, and then Billy Graham arguing the other side of the theological question. They both looked absolutely genuine, and both were made up. That kind of stuff is scary, and I'm not quite sure how we'll get around it.
Well, I think it's probably all boiling down to what the Bible tells us is where we're headed here towards the end, I would imagine, because I could see where AI could be a tremendous benefit to an Antichrist type of person out there. This addiction to meta stuff, it's almost like a drug. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it as well. When you're talking again, the battle for America's soul is, if you take a cell phone away from a young person or something, and they videoed it a few times, where somebody's had their cell phone took away from them, I mean, they're literally called every name they can think of and told this and that. And I've looked at that, Robert, and thought, well, there was the part in the Bible says where your own family would sell you out in the end. And, think that they would sell you out for a cell phone. But they would, by listening and by watching what some of these things go on. So these are really troubling areas for us when you talk about the book that you've written, The Battle for America's Soul. On chapter 5 of the book, you've got Restoring the Natural Family. So, first of all, kind of tell us the natural family. It's a shame we have to use that word, but what is the natural family these days?
Yeah, they've redefined it. The natural family is mom, dad, and the kids. And the kids include their biological offspring and adopted children, and extended family members like grandparents, aunts, and uncles. Family, of course, goes all the way back to Adam and Eve. They were a family, and they had sons and so forth. But over time, the left decided that the family was the real enemy, because families sustain churches. Their real enemy is God, of course. They're anti-God. Marx was a Satanist, and there was a book recently written called Karl Marx and the Devil, and it's excellent. It lays out how he was basically possessed by demons and hated Christians, hated Christianity, hated Judaism, even though he was Jewish, and he formulated the idea that the state must be made God and in place of the real God. And the left has been working on that ever since. And, the left really got going in the French Revolution in 1789, when, unlike the American Revolution, which was about restoring the God-given rights of Americans, this was about bringing down a monarchy and bringing down the idea of a God-blessed monarchy. So they took over the Cathedral of Notre Dame, and they brought a goat in and crowned it the goddess of reason. And then they started chopping off people's heads. I mean, the left has been an evil force for a couple hundred years. In America, it was held at bay because of what de Tocqueville called the nation with the soul of the church, that the churches were teaching the truth of the Bible. And that was a great vaccine against the disease of the left that had swept areas of Europe. But in recent decades, as Christianity receded and its influence receded, the left began pushing its philosophy through schools in particular. The major leftist figures have said, give me the children and I will have the nation in a generation. In fact, Fidel Castro said that of Cuba. And so they've concentrated on the schools. You have major teachers' unions like the National Education Association and the American Federation of Teachers, which are run by Marxists. I'm pretty sure both heads of these unions, which control have millions of members in total, are both lesbian activists. And so they're behind a lot of the LGBT curriculum that they're pushing in public schools. As far as the schools, make it clear, if you can get your kid out of the government school, you should. You should either homeschool or send or kid to a Christian school. Nothing is more important. If you have to give up your second car, do it. We made sacrifices. We pulled our kids out of the public schools in Virginia because we saw what they were starting to teach, which was bad values. They were starting to sexualize them at early ages. I said, we're not going to have this. And I remember hearing a broadcast in Dr. Dobson's Focus on the Family, where they're talking about, in fact, my wife heard this, about a story where a woman saw her child taken by an alligator in Florida, and she fought the alligator, and she said she would have let her arm be ripped off rather than let her child be taken like that. And Dr. Dobson said, parents, you have to feel that way. Think of the government schools as an alligator. You must get your kids away from them. They've been so corrupted. And I think we have to do two things. We, as citizens, as taxpayers, have to fight to clean up our public schools because they do affect so many millions of kids, and get them to get rid of the woke curricula and all that. But we should protect our kids first of all and get them out of that situation.
Well, folks, we're talking about the battle for America's soul with Robert Knight. Stay with us. We'll have more right after this.
Sharing your faith can be as easy as sharing your favorite radio station.
There's no greater way to share the gospel, to reach as many people as possible than through Christian radio.
Tell your friends where they can experience hope.
It's always pointed to Christ.
91.7 The Word.
And welcome back to Crosspoint. We're talking today with Robert H. Knight. We're talking about the battle for America's soul. There is a battle going on out there. I know you did say there in the book, Robert, that you say we cannot solve all of society's pressing problems overnight, but it would be a mistake to undervalue the power of a good example. And that's what we've got to be as Christians, do we not? Not just to our family, but to the whole world, the whole country, America in general. No matter what's going on, we have to remain a good example.
Yeah, we can't go with the tides. We have to be reflecting God's grace and God's strength, too. If you're consistent, people see that, because so many people are swayed by the culture that when someone comes along and they have genuine faith and they exhibit it, people gravitate toward it. They say, what is this? I'm used to people being kind of weaselly and going with the flow lest they offend anybody. And I'm not saying we should go out and be offensive at all. We should be discerning. We should be gentle as doves and as wise as serpents, as we're told to be in the New Testament. There's a wonderful Bible verse called, where it says, a gentle word turns away wrath. And I think that's what we have to do. We have to speak the truth in love with a rational, calm voice as best we can, even in the face of evil things. Very quick story. I remember being at a ball game, and I'm sitting there with my two kids, and this woman in front of us started swearing like crazy, using the F word and everything. I mean, she was really going off, and I'd had enough of it, and I tapped her on the shoulder, and I said very politely, I said, ma'am, would you please keep the profanity down? I got my two kids here. And she erupted in fury and turned around and said, who the heck are you? And then she laced me with a whole bunch of F words and everything. And then when she was done, instead of being angry, and this is only the Holy Spirit that did this through me, because I would have liked to knock her block off, I said, well, okay, ma'am, I know you feel you have a right to do that, and all I'm doing is just asking for a little consideration. And I just quietly sat down. And she sat there, and I saw her cheeks get red, and then she turned around and stopped all profanity and started treating my kids like hers, and started asking them if they wanted something, and she was kind as could be. And I thought, my gosh, if you treat people kindly, they tend to respond in kind. Not always, but that was a lesson to me, that a gentle word turns away wrath.
Yeah, and I think Chapter 7 of your book is, talking about exposing and countering hate, because that's what you were doing. You were countering hate at the time, and that's what the other side seems to want to do. They want to call us Nazis when that's what they're doing. They're doing what the Nazis did. They want to call us, we're untruthful, we're telling lies, when that's what they're doing. Everything that you try to, talk to them about, and you've seen it, you've seen the people, they've got into the different conversations, whether it's been Charlie Kirk or anybody else with somebody, and everything that person standing at the mic saying they're accusing them of is exactly what they are.
It's true. It's called, the psychologists call this projection, where they project onto other people what they themselves are doing. And the people on the left have been doing this for years, accusing people of hate when they're not hateful, accusing people of discriminating when they're not. They do it all. I've debated people on campuses and everything else, and I've seen it up close. The hatred is very real, and it's kind of sad. People are so caught up in that.
Yeah. Chapter 8 of the book, you talk about in there, looking at page 84, about how progressives have captured several of the Christian denominations, such as the Episcopal Church USA, the Congregational Church, even some Baptist church. A lot of it's got the LGBT whatever as the spear point, but a lot of churches, not a lot, I guess, but a lot of churches that used to not be that way have now went the other direction and are really on the side of the left.
Yeah, they are. I want to say this so I'm not misquoted somewhere, but they invade institutions that oppose them and take them over rather than destroy them, and that makes it even worse. It's like infected cells. I was raised Episcopal, and of course that was way back in the days when the Episcopal prayer book was straight out of the Bible, and none of this LGBTQ stuff was in there, and it was all very biblical. But I couldn't ever go back to it unless the church changed radically. We go to a non-denominational church right now that's all Bible and very clear-cut teachings of the Bible. But yeah, there's been a very concerted effort to take over the churches and turn them into instruments of the woke left. And this, like, the spear point has been the LGBTQ issue, but it goes beyond that. Sometimes it's accusations of racism. The left has advanced that by falsely claiming that America is, the uniquely racist nation in the world, that we invented slavery, and then they make people feel guilty and teach kids to hate their country. And they do that with the 1619 Project that came out of the New York Times, which falsifies American history, saying we're only here because of slavery. And kids, without alternative sources of information, they swallow this stuff up and they lose hope. They think their country's rotten and that they have no hope for the future in such a rotten place. It's really poisonous.
Now, you talk about in Chapter 10, on the day after the 2024 election, that people believe that God had given America a reprieve from 4 years of the progressive government, that Joe Biden had run the most actually radically left-wing administration in our history. If that is so, then much will be required of those to whom much has been given. So what do we do? What do we do in a case like this? We have come out of a kind of a dark season, and we know the fight is on because that's what we're seeing every day in the media and everywhere else is people are pushing back. They don't like having to clean up their cities and all this kind of stuff. And, we do have a divided country.
We do, but if we remain true to our faith, then God will see us through. I have a childlike faith in that God will protect us. And it's like the land of Goshen, where the Jews were faithful to God, and He protected them in the area of Goshen in Egypt. All kinds of terrible things were happening outside that, but He protected them. And the land of Goshen today for us is our own homes, our churches, and wherever we carry our faith. And I do see a revival going on. I think a lot of people are going back to church. A lot of young people are showing an interest in spiritual things. It's happening even in the National Football League. You see players more and more willing to share their faith. I remember Jaden Daniels, who's the great young quarterback for the Washington Commanders. After they won they won the right to be in the NFC Championship game. They interviewed him, and the first thing he did was give credit to his Lord Jesus Christ. And then they called on another player because they were getting uncomfortable with that. And he said, "Oh, yeah, it's all about the Lord."
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, we need more guys like this who are unashamed of their faith and are looked up to by lots of young people.
Now, you do include in the back of chapter 12 of the book, Getting Off the Sidelines is the title, but you give some actions to take to restore American liberty. So what can we do? You talk about we need to seek wise counsel, evangelize, of course, participate in voter registration drives, but what do we need to be doing to help restore America's soul in a way?
We have to be the fragrance that Paul talked about, that's sweet to those who are being saved, but smells like death to those who weren't. We can't be afraid of that. We have to carry our faith everywhere we can, quietly and effectively, but we also have to participate in public institutions. I mean, that means going to school boards and saying what you're doing is wrong. It means volunteering to be a poll watcher or a worker at the polls on election day and helping to register people to vote. And I do have a whole list of things people can be doing that are very practical. But on a personal level, the best thing people can do is share their faith in their own sphere of influence. I think C.S. Lewis said the most radical political act a Christian can do is to convert another person to Christ, because then their mind is open to the truth, and they're no longer walking in darkness and are easily fooled. And that's what we need, is a well-informed electorate that isn't fooled anymore by the nonsense. And I think that is what's happening. I think people are waking up. There's a great resistance going on. Look at how fast Cracker Barrel took it on the chin for saying we're going to modernize and get rid of the logo and all that. That's no small thing. It shows that people are now willing to push back and restore what they value. And it's not just a restaurant chain that we're talking about. We're talking about the idea of people standing for what they think is good and right and shouldn't be messed with. And it's heartening to see people recover their moxie, so to speak.
And, to just mentioning like what happened to Cracker Barrel, the lady comes out and says, all these people are behind it. They're all wanting to get their stores changed just as soon as they can. I mean, this is just lies.
It is.
They just stand there and lie and have no thought about what they're doing. And so we need to stand up for truth, that's of course. But what we need to do is exactly what you just talked about. You mentioned it, especially on the back of your book, talk about how we as Christians need to quit being on the defensive about everything, but go on the offensive about everything as well, right?
Yeah, and one of the greatest examples of that is the Babylon Bee, which is a satirical Christian-run website and blog, and they do the most effective satire that I've ever seen. They take apart the left, but they do it with humor. And I would urge all the listeners to check out the Babylon Bee. It is hilarious, and it pokes good-natured fun at Christians from within the Christian world. Yep. You can laugh at yourself. I think it was Steve Martin who said there's a difference between humor and comedy. Humor, we're laughing at ourselves, and it's good-natured. Comedy is cruel. Babylon Bee is not cruel, but it's very funny.
Yeah. Well, again, before we leave here, Robert, tell us how people can find out more about the Battle for America's Soul and the other work that you do as well.
Okay. Well, I write a column every week for the Washington Times. You can always go to the Washington Times website, WashingtonTimes.com. Look me up under the commentary section. But my website has it all. It's roberthknight.com. In fact, I'll go beyond that, Mark. If people want to send me an email, I'll sign them right up for my column every Monday. And I don't mind giving out my personal email. It's robertknight4, the numeral 4, at gmail.com. robertknight4 at gmail.com. Just write in the subject line, sign me up. You could write me a note or not. You don't have to do anything else, and I'll just go ahead and add your email address to my list. No charge. I won't spam you. You just get the column.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us today here on Crosspoint.
It was a pleasure, Mark. God bless you.
Hey, that was a good interview today with Robert. And, all the stuff centers around this book in my other hand, the Bible, what words it contains. helps us walk through this life, finds everything you need to know about life, inspired words of God. So the words are never outdated. The Bible contains the most important words you're ever going to read and certainly ever follow. Be sure and join us again next time as we can discuss issues that are affecting the church. Have a great week and allow God to use you for His purposes so that greater things can be done. Make your life count in God's plans for eternity. I'm Mark Taylor.
Crosspoint is a program produced in Studio 101 at KNEO Radio. Not all of the views on Crosspoint reflect those of the management or staff of KNEO. You may contact the Crosspoint program at 10827 Highway 86 East, Neosho, Missouri 64850, or by email crosspoint@kneo.org. You can hear Crosspoint 4 times a week: Saturday morning at 1, Saturday afternoon at 2, Saturday evening at 9, and Sunday evening at 7. You can also listen anytime online at kneo.org.